Hello, and welcome back. We're jumping straight in. Today's readings was Leviticus 8 to 10. We kick off with the ordination of the priests. I think I mentioned yesterday, all the sort of ritual that's associated with setting these priests up and the building of the tabernacle and the purification of the tabernacle outside of the symbolism and what it points to in Christ. And what I mean by that is, all the killing of the animals right from the garden, there is this consistent imagery of sin resulting in death. I tend to like to think of it almost as physics, right? Light extinguishes darkness. Um, and a consequence of one thing is by physics another. The consequence of sin is death. Such is the way God seems to have set up the world. And so from the garden when Adam and Eve sinned, and there was they covered themselves with clothes of leaves, but then God gave them clothes of animal skins, which, despite not saying explicitly, quite strongly implies that an animal had to have been killed to get the skins for them. And then we can even go on to the nature of the size of the animal, which would have to have provided a covering for a man and a woman. But again, we're going too far into sort of implications and speculation. But there is at least a strong implication that it's not that far-fetched an idea that an animal had to die to provide its skin for the covering of Adam and Eve. Right through to the various offerings that are given to God, up until the law itself is given. And in Leviticus, we've had it defined that there is an offering specifically for sin that involves the killing of an animal. And so all of that points to sin resulting in death, which is as God said, the moment you eat of this fruit, the moment you participate in disobeying me, the moment you sin, you die. All that points to the necessity of Christ then needing to die to take away our sin, being the ultimate lamb, being the ultimate sacrifice, in accordance with the rules that have been so clearly laid out here, to take away the sin of mankind. So all of those, I think, outside of that symbolism, also adds, I feel, an air of importance and significance to the tabernacle and to what was going on at the time. And I don't know if articulated this properly, but we associate certain rituals with certain things, and it adds to the prestige of the thing or to the importance of the thing. A wedding, a birthday party, a graduation ceremony, all of these things, adding to the very importance, the very significance of the events that they are built around. And so we are coming to pretty much the culmination of this, this grand endeavor to build a tabernacle, to build a dwelling place for the Lord amongst his people with the ordination of the priest. And Moses is instructed specifically again to go about this a certain way. And that the specificity of God's instructions, I think, also adds to the fact that this isn't just a off the shelf, just do this. This isn't them copying what was going on at the time around the people that were there. This is them, God demonstrating that there is a specific process to follow. And Moses following that process indicates, it's a significant thing. It's not a thing to be taken lightly. And so Moses goes about, ordaining the priest in Leviticus. They've built all of these things. They've built the good evening, Mom. Hi, Mom. That's Elias here. Possibly Dad as well. So good evening, Dad. Uh, so Moses has gone through, and we saw when God blessed. Oh, we saw this Behazel, and Ohiolab. I'm completely destroying their names. Um, but two artisans that God had blessed, two artisans who, by their own descriptions, were very skilled in their craft, but God had blessed with His Spirit and the wisdom, and they had built the attire for the priest. They built the chest piece, the stones that were inlaid with the names of the tribes, the turban, the Urim and Thummim. All of these things have been designed and built by these artisans. Um, and Moses was now putting it on, Aaron as the priest, and also on his sons, following this new line of um, priesthood in the Levitical, in the tribe of Levites. And it's important to recognize how God stays within his the rules that he puts down. He stays within, and so in ordaining a priest, he uses someone who's of the same line, because Moses and Aaron are brothers, both of the tribe of Levi. And that's where that priestly line comes from. Now, not again forgetting that there is another line, the line of Melchizedek, who we met in the time of Abraham, who was a priest of the Lord outside of the Levitical line, um, and who then allows for Christ to be our priest, even though Christ is not of the tribe of Levi, because Christ is of the tribe of Judah, because Christ is also the king, and the scepter of ruling was never to leave the tribe of Judah until the true king comes, who is Christ. So you see God laying down this framework and the rules, and himself also following it. Um, but then also, you know, maneuvering within those rules that he has set, such that he doesn't even break his own rules. And I think it's important to recognize, if God himself doesn't break his own rules, then why should we think that we can? And we'll see that in today's reading. So Moses goes about the proper procedure of making a thing holy with the blood of the offering, spilling it on the altar, spilling it on the sons, and then he takes another bull, which is the blood of the ordination offering, and does the same, slaughters it, applies some of the blood to Aaron's ear, to his thumb, and to the big toe of his right foot. I want to point out something else. When Moses was expanding on the law in Exodus, he pointed out how a slave, so this was part of God sort of sanctifying the culture. But he said after 7 years, after 6 years or 7 years, a slave could go free. If they didn't want to, then they would go and they would get their ear pierced by their own, and they'll say, now I belong to this family. It's unsurprising then that the blood is applied to Aaron's right ear, because he is also now a born servant of the Lord. Well, I just found that interesting. But Moses goes through that whole process. Um, he boils the meat and gives it to the priest Aaron and his sons to eat, as was part of the instruction, and they're to remain there for 7 days, at which point they would be purified and made right with God. And Aaron and his sons did everything the Lord had commanded through Moses. So we've got this grand uh, ceremony that Aaron and his sons followed accordingly. Um, and after that, are able to start their work. And so on the eighth day, they start they start their work as the Lord's priest, as he dwells amongst them. Um, we see the people, you know, exceedingly excited about this, and they are described as bowing and praising, worshiping the Lord when the priests go about their work. I'll pull that up in a second. So as you know, Aaron's going about his work of giving this sacrifice, this special offering to the Lord, and as he raises it, fire blazed forth from the Lord's presence and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. There's been an indication that their offering has been received, and when the people saw this, they shouted with joy and fell face down on the ground. So the priests have now started working, and their first sort of official duty of giving up a sacrifice, because they did according to the rules, God received, God consumed, and the people were exceedingly excited. They shouted with joy and they fell face down. I think a couple of days ago, I was pointing out, I can't remember his name again. I need to ask Anita. But the priests. Oh, my mum shared a picture. So yesterday I was trying to find this and I couldn't. And mum has very kindly shared a picture, which I'm going to share now, of the priest attire, um, which is, again, such an incredible thing. Yes. Thank you, mum. Let's download that and I'll share this now. Um, and I'll try. I'll link to it in the description as well, so that anyone can sort of go and find it. But let's see, where is it? Downloads, images. Alright, so let's share that. So yeah, here you go. Here is the. Let's try and make that a little bit bigger. So this was the attire of the priests. And you can see the specificity, the intricacy with which it was made. And they had to wear this specifically before they go. And it was a whole process, the uniform of the priests, that they go before the Lord and carrying the names of the tribes, knowing that they're representing the tribes, but also reminding the Lord that these are the representations of the tribes. It was just, yeah, an amazing thing. And this was unlike any of the attire at the time. This wasn't the usual of all the priests around. It's not, as far as I know. This was God's specific design that was given to them. Thank you so much, Mom, for sharing that. Yeah, that's dope. And I'll leave that up as I carry on. Now, Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu, they did something that was not according to the rules. So Leviticus 10, they put coals of fire in the incense burners and sprinkled incense over them. In this way, they disobeyed the Lord by burning before him the wrong kind of fire, different than he had commanded. It's easy, and I think it's easy to say God is cruel or God is mean in destroying these people. It says in 10 verse 2, fire blazed forth from the Lord's presence and burned them up, and they died there before the Lord. They made a mistake, right? They made a mistake, and fire blazed forth from God's presence and burned them up. Now, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, if I put my hand on a hot stove and it burns me, is the stove cruel or wicked in any way? No. If I jump into a speeding train and it smashes me to pieces, is the train mean in any way? No. It is because I didn't recognize or appreciate the danger of doing that that consequence happens. And I think here, especially with the and I was talking about all these sort of grand circumstance surrounding the establishment of the tabernacle and the process of ordaining the priest and the specificity of the sacrifices, that there's a sense of this is important. So I don't think that Nadab and Abihu can claim, oh, they didn't know it was important, they didn't know it was serious. All of that um process will definitely give you a sense of, nah, this is something that I need to pay attention to, right? And so even if they did that out of ignorance, there's still no excuse. It's such a This is the presence of the Lord that you're dealing with. This is the creator of the universe that you're dealing with. You approach, with a reverence. And when the Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, this is what it's talking about, right? There is no blame on a snake if I go and sit in its enclosure and don't pay attention. There's no blame on a tiger if I go to the London Zoo and jump in the tiger enclosure and then it eats me up, because I should have recognized what that tiger is capable of. And I think that's how we have to approach God, is recognize who God is. It's and I said this a couple of days ago. Sometimes we treat it as though there's two different gods in the Bible. There's a God of an Old Testament and a God of a New. No, it's one God. It's one God that created the heavens and the earth. One God that creates the universe and controls it. There's one God that exists outside of time and has created us and knows us so intricately as to know the number of hairs on our head. Now, Christ and grace allow for us to come before Him as children, but that doesn't change who He is. And we shouldn't then, because we can come before Him as children, treat Him just like an ATM, as some of us do, where all it is God answer my prayer, God answer my prayer, and I don't care about what it is that you desire or what you want or who you are. I just know that if I pray, or I've just been told that if I fast, then I will get exactly what I want. And therefore, I will pray, I will fast, I will give donations, and then you will just acquiesce or submit to whatever it is I desire. No, He is the Lord. And there's a need to recognize that. He is the Lord who spoke this universe into being. And if He spoke the universe into being, what can He do to us? Better yet, He is the Lord that says, do not fear the one that can kill just the body. We sometimes treat, you know, for lack of a better example, we treat armed robbers or crazy people or people with a knife as though they are super scary, which in fact they are, because we recognize the danger of a knife or a crazy person or a gun. But they can only destroy the body. What about He who can destroy the body and the spirit? And so there is a sense here where Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, do this mistake. If it was out of ignorance, or if it was out of sheer not recognizing the significance of what they were doing, or it was out of laziness, none of that is sort of described. All it is that they did the wrong thing, and fire blazed forth in the Lord's presence and burned them up. And the Lord, the Lord Moses, when explaining this to Aaron, because his sons have just died, says, this is what the Lord meant when He said, I will display my holiness through those who come near me. I will display my glory before all the people. And there is a sense where God's holiness isn't just, oh, there's, in that time and in that scenario, there was the pillar of smoke and there was a pillar of cloud. Or now that the tabernacle had been built, there was the cloud, the Shekinah glory that rested upon it. That was a display of God's holiness, yes. But then this also, the striking out of those that do not follow in accordance with the rules, also displays God's holiness, also display His glory, because it means you can't just play around. You can't just play around with God. And I think that's an aspect that we shouldn't forget. Definitely an aspect that we shouldn't forget. And so, further to that point, Moses, when he calls Aaron's cousins to come and then take the bodies away, um, he warns Aaron to not, you know, you can't lose your composure. Again, there is this reverence for God. You can't just lose your composure. And my kids are dead, and so I'm gonna get angry and tear my clothes and sackcloth and all of this. You can't do that because you are a priest, right? And he calls them to that level of discipline, but also reverence because of the Lord. And in his destruction of Nadab and Abihu, he doesn't give them excuse to forget again who he is, or to not give the right reverence for it. So the Lord carries on with further instructions for the priestly conduct. And again, we see that the priests have a certain um, standard that they need to live up to. And as much as this is the Levitical priest, I think we as Christians have a certain standard that we must live up to. These were priests who, even by their very attire, stood out from all of Israel as the Lord's servants, the Lord's priests. We as Christians, by that very name, being Christ like, stand out from the rest of the world, should stand out for the rest of the world. And where we don't have a priestly uniform, as Mom has shared and we can see here, we have his spirit within us. We carry within us something even greater, something that stands us apart even more, because we now carry the Spirit of God and his presence. Um, and as we are being conformed into his image, wherever we go, we are representatives of Christ. And so we also are called to a certain standard. Um, so as God's given the priest, this instruction on their conduct, I think it's worth us considering and thinking about our own conduct and whether or not it is becoming of one who carries the name Christian. So Moses goes on, and I think they again have an instance where they don't do the right thing in terms of they're supposed to treat the sin offering when it comes a certain way. They're supposed to, I believe, eat it at the right time. In 10:16, Moses then asked them what happened to the goat of the sin offering. When he discovered it had been burned up, he became very angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons. Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sacred area? It is a holy offering. The Lord has given it to you to remove the guilt of the community and to purify the people, making them right to the Lord. Since the blood was not brought into the holy place, you should have eaten the meat in the sacred area. And Aaron then answers, today my sons presented both their sin offering and their burnt offering to the Lord, and yet this tragedy has happened to me. If I had eaten the people's sin offering on such a tragic day as this, would the Lord have been pleased? So in this instance, Aaron is right in sort of not eating the offering because of what's happened with his other two sons. And so Moses heard this and they were satisfied. But again, there is a reverence for what God has put in place in terms of his rules and in terms of the conduct of the priest. And Aaron is able to follow it actually in this instance. And so he doesn't get killed. And in fact, in as much as they didn't go according to what they were supposed to do, because of the nature of Aaron's answer and the way he was thinking, Moses was actually satisfied, and God was also satisfied because he hadn't destroyed them. So he was also okay with it. But that's where today's reading ends, and that's Leviticus 8 to 10. Tomorrow's reading is Leviticus 11 to 13. And for those of us that like statistics, we have now read 142 chapters and 46 days of the Bible. We are 11.9% through the Bible. And I really do hope that this is not meant to be a super detailed exegesis of the word, but it's just me trying to be consistent with reading, and I'm hoping that it's encouraging us all to be consistent. We eat every day, we sleep every day. If we recognize that the word of God is food for our spirits and is necessary for our growth, then we should be spending time in it every single day. And if I can do it, because I'm fairly busy with kids and with work and with side projects and stuff that I want to do, um, you know, anyone can do it. You know, you just have to be consistent. Sometimes that will not look great. Sometimes that will look like 11:59. I'm here trying to get it done. But we get it done. And if I can, you can. So I hope that this encourages you to pick up and read and spend some time in the Word. And yeah, God willing, I'll be here tomorrow, and we'll jump through Leviticus 11 to 13. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Pastor Lyle, Pastor Emmanuel. Thank you for the image of the high priest and the clothing that was designed for them. And yeah, God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.